Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Tuesday, October 8th, 2019, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, we're going to continue looking at the quote unquote giant state by state, or the large hominids, as I like to call them. And, that could conceivably be under that classification, humanoids. And the reason why I say humanoids is because of Brian Forster's research there in the Paracas mummies. He sent the DNA to be examined by a lab, and it came back that they weren't exactly human. So, maybe compatible genetically, as far as offspring are concerned, but not exactly human. So, rather, if they're not exactly human, they're humanoid. So, these double row toothed giants with large teeth, large cranium, vaulted cranium, elongated long skulls, whatever they are that are found here in the Americas, okay, they may be humanoid as well. And I got a little tip for you guys. Look, if you're ever involved in a polite conversation with anybody on this subject, all right, don't say giant. Okay, because see, people have what they call preconceived notions, right? And I'm talking, you and I, we're cool with that on this channel. And, we know when we say giant, we're talking about large hominids or humanoids. We know we're cool with that here, so we say giants all we want. But see, when you're trying to talk to somebody on the outside, just anybody, or maybe one of these thick-headed people in your own family, okay, which is always going to be some or all, who knows. But don't say giants because, see, they have these preconceived notions. He's like a sports football team, this baseball team, okay, a big green guy with asparagus hair and a leaf tunic and sandals, or Jack and Beanstalk, which I already told everybody on this channel. I did a video about how that is just leftover propaganda from ancient times when it was kill all giants, and that went on throughout the ages there, and certainly throughout the Holocene era, the beginning of the Holocene era, all the way up until who knows, even more recently than we think. But in any case, just do yourself a favor, don't, because when you say large hominids, it's going to be, what are you talking about? See, people have a preconceived notion, there's an opinion formed beforehand without adequate evidence. See, they don't know that there's evidence of large hominids. They don't know that. They know all that other stuff. They just don't know that there's evidence of large hominids being in the Americas or anywhere else in this world. Okay? So, when you say large giants, you're going to be like, what? But if you say large hominids, they'll be like, wow, how large? Who are you talking about? See, it's just, you're trying to get around those preconceived notions, and that's just one way of doing it. I'm just saying, like I said, we're cool on the channel. We can talk about it all we want. We know what it is. They don't. And, what really fascinates me about these accounts of the giants state by state here is that, is the details of some of the accounts. When there are details, sometimes there aren't any details, just a mere mention out of a, town history or some book or something like that. So, but it's fascinating, the details, whether it be, the size and shape of the skeleton, or, the phenotype and the dental work there, and things and items and artifacts found with them. And again, I did the research on my channel, and my video prove it, on archaeology in New York State. This pamphlet put out by New York State, that was done by the head archaeologist of New York State for a very long time, by William A. Ritchie. He died in his 90s, I think, in like 1995. He was a graduate of like SUNYs in archaeology somewhere upstate, a couple upstate universities. And then he got a PhD in anthropology at Columbia University, I believe, I think, in New York City. got a PhD in anthropology, and so he was a learned guy and everything. But he went to school at the time, in a time where Alice Herdlischka, the head of the Bureau of Ethnology for the Smithsonian, was heavily influencing academics. And it had to pass muster with him before it even get anybody even talked about it. And he was heavily suppressing archaeological finds like Frank C. Hibbins there in Galena Canyon and Sandia Cave. Okay, he didn't. This is at a time where he ruled the roost, and he's heavily influenced a lot of people in archaeology and anthropology. And and William A. Ritchie here from New York State is one of them. So, whereas he admits that a lot of skeletal remains have never been found for some of these, Paleolithic and mid-woodland and early woodland, late woodland, these are the periods they associate with peoples before the Native Americans, or at least, there's never been a direct. This is what's murky about it, is just there's no direct ancestry there to the Dina and the Hopewell and everybody else, because of the morphology, because of the phenotypes. It's just, goes unspoken. Isn't it curious to you that that's why it is? And listen to what I have to say. When I'm reading from this New York State pamphlet that can be found in any library, and I found every single library that I've ever been in has this pamphlet, and this is done archaeology. This is extremely interesting. Another notable feature of some early and middle woodland cultures is the relatively larger size of many of the articles. There are, for example, enormous carved antler combs ranging up to 14 inches in length. Okay? 14 inches in length. Large engraved bone daggers, massive harpoons, and extremely long stone blades, all of which suggest an energetic people imbued with definite and objective ideas. And this baloney statement here were doubtless votive offerings. So they were just... Okay, so Richie is, pulling our leg there with these energetic people, that bullshit statement there, because he's one of these acolytes of an apparatchiks of Alice Herdlischka, okay? So none of these large items that are found could ever be associated with people of a size, of a phenotype and morphology that would be able to handle these items. So obviously you have to stick with that story. Even though no skeletons were found, the ones they did found were so heavily decomposed they could not make sense of it. It states that in this article. So just to give you an idea of what is considered modern archaeology, what is accepted modern archaeology here, these 14-inch combs, large harpoons, and long knives. And it's just so curiously, all these accounts of large skeletal remains being found everywhere, it's like, it's not fooling me, because I can add, like anybody else, 2 and 2. So Richie ain't fooling me. And as long as you don't have skeletal remains, how could you say yes or no, or yay or nay, to whether there are people that existed at these times, especially because this is already old archaeology anyway, and now they can take a fragment of a skeleton, put it through a computer program, and create the whole entire skeleton to many details. I'm sure there will be a bias in there of Homo sapiens, because that's how it goes. There were no large hominids in the past with weird cranials that were natural. They all deformed somehow, artificially. See? So that's the story that we're asked to accept, whereas, research has proved differently. Unfortunately, nobody will accept it. Like David Paulides' research on Bigfoot, right? He had the DNA done with that too, and it seems that Bigfoot is more human DNA than animal DNA. Everybody thought it was an ape, and he can't get any universities to look at the research that he bought and paid for. Okay, but they're asking universities to, they won't accept it. Okay, what are they afraid of? Okay, just dismiss it as nonsense as a cover story, whereas for something that they're afraid of. And I think that Bigfoot has something to do with the giants, and we've talked about it with some of the subs. And I'm going to go over that in a future video. But let's do Rhode Island, folks. Now I said a lot of junk. There's only 2 accounts here, but they're interesting nonetheless. And again, it's just the details about these accounts of these large skeletal remains. When there are details, there aren't always details, but when there are, it's just so interesting. And again, folks, this whole thing with men of unusual height, okay? So just use your common sense, okay? So back in the time when this was written, this is an early account, I think, people were of shorter stature. So if everybody walking around was 6'6", like now, it's not uncommon to see 6'6" people, right? Why would you put this in your newspaper that you got to sell to people, okay? Men of unusual height. So if it's unusual height, it would be unusual height to people who lived back then. In current archaeology today, when they report about like the people, the curator of the museum there by Lovelock Cave, that holds the Lovelock Cave artifacts, okay, they're suddenly not unusual, okay, just slightly more robust, which I already told you is a bullshit euphemism for bigger, okay, and they have to be able to explain that. And the history of height and the science involved with the history of height does not explain it. And we've stopped growing, and it can't explain that one either. See, it's defying their own knowledge of it based on Darwinian theory, which may be inadequate. Okay? So, when you see unusual height in a newspaper article, it's because it's their unusual height. And look, guys, if I don't get to all of these state by state, I'm going to try to cover a lot in Connecticut. Don't worry, I'll get to it in the next video. We'll cover it all, okay? Because I'm so fascinated by this. I hope you are too. Indian skeletons at Oakland Beach. Skeletons of 2 Narragansett Indians were exhumed at Oakland Beach recently. They're supposed to be the remains of warriors of the Shawnee tribe, most likely Algonquin. The bones are in possession of Herbert A. Stone are being examined by many interested in colonial history of Rhode Island. One is supposed to have been 70 years old at the time of death, and the other about 25, 2 men of unusual height. It is suggested they may have been the victims of the Great Swamp Fight in South Kingstown in December 1675, and returning wounded reached the Warwick County there to die. Many arrowheads were also found in the graves. Well, it sounds to me like a ritual burial, ceremonial burial with the many arrowheads that were found in the grave. How big were they? What did they look like? We don't know. Where are the artifacts with this? But again, they're referring to a history that they're familiar with. You know, they couldn't possibly know what era these skeletal remains were from. So just you can discount that because, you know, they're referring to a history that they know about. That's all. And if they are referring to them as Native American Indians, that seems, you know, them being of unusual height wouldn't surprise them, okay, if they were Native Americans, because Native Americans were reported to be, even by Verrazano, I went over that on this channel, in a video on this channel. Okay, Verrazano noted that they were bigger in size, and one of them looked actually white to him. Okay, that they were somehow much lighter skinned. It was very curious to me. And again, it seems to me that in later times, perhaps before what we currently accept as Native American Indians, okay, that the chieftains of these tribes, of the good giants that I went over on my channel here, the good giants of the Native American Indians, these chieftains of larger stature, of a gigantic stature, okay, were the royalty of these tribes, similar to that of the Watusi tribe in Africa, where all the royalty of that tribe are 7 foot and taller. The regular, their subjects or whatever, the Tutsi people are just people of average size. 5'7", and not particularly tall people at all. But the Watusis, who are the royalty of that particular tribe, are 7 foot tall, and they have odd-shaped cranium. Whether it's due to artificial cranial deformation or not, I don't know, because you can't find any freaking information on them, or barely any. Okay, so this is from Burrville. This is recounting, I guess, the town history. Burrville, 8-footer, and that is mighty big. A few years ago, a discovery was made by one of our citizens which reveals the physical character of those whom our ancestors had to contend. In 1836, Captain Samuel White, in excavating beneath his wood house, found the remains of a human skeleton of proportions altogether unlike our modern inhabitants. He called several of his neighbors to view it, and among them was Dr. Levi Eddy. The body was lying upon the side with arms folded, head bent forward, and the knees drawn upward, which seems to be a very common way for these burials, when these skeletal remains are found, that they're in this position. It obviously means something, whatever it is. It's ceremonial burial in this position has some sort of meaning. This Dr. Levi Eddy looked at it, and again, they're going to say, well, what do they know back? They knew everything. Trust me, Gray's Anatomy, it's all old stuff. The doctors back then, they knew everything about human skeletal anatomy, and being from agrarian societies, there was just slaughtering animals was going on everywhere. Animal bones galore, you name it. Okay, we're everywhere. It's easy to tell. This whole notion that they didn't know it back then is ridiculous, okay? This is what the arguments are, and the people who are against the giants for religious reasons or whatever. It was assumed the bones were put together, and all the parties were surprised at its gigantic height. After surveying it a while, the doctor exclaimed he was a bouncer. He must have been as much as 8 feet high, okay? Contributed by this girl here. From chapter 1 of a book titled Burrville as It Was and and it is, I think, as it is what it is, as it was and as it is. Okay, so it's from 1856. Okay, or I think that's 1856, yeah, so 20 years later, I guess, a few years ago. Okay, so that's it for Rhode Island. There's nothing there. And a couple of finds there, a couple of accounts there. But again, you have to remember about all the times something was found and it wasn't accounted for, and it wasn't reported on. I'm sure it happened again and again because of the incredible hatred against the Native Americans, prejudices, etc. They didn't care. They dug up bones, they threw them on the side, threw them out in the garbage, everything went in the dumpster. Okay, so now we're going to Connecticut here. And that's of interest to me because that's where a lot of my research took place, up there in upstate there, very high in Fairfield County there. And here, you can see in my video here, a megalithic turtle, okay? And this megalithic turtle is a sea turtle, and it has a white quartz face. There's eyes carved in it, and you can see the stones that were picked to be the arms and legs of the turtle are unlike many of the turtle effigies in the Northeast, where the legs are segmented, okay, into several segments, okay. So these were obviously picked to look like flippers, and at this angle you can see it obviously looks like a flipper, okay. I went through this with people on Facebook who wanted to bait me originally when I put a link to my video in there, when I posted a video there, this video here, okay. They all tell me, well, you know, it's a sea turtle, it could be a terrible, but not with the white on the face, okay? Sea turtles have this white underside to them and underside of their face, and the stones are single stones. It's the only one like it found in the Northeast here, folks. That's on my channel, my research done in Connecticut, okay? And, they conceded, yeah, it's probably going to have to be like that because look at the position of the stones, and they were picked as single pieces, both in the rear as well. You can see the shadow of the two rear ones, also one piece. Huge megalithic stones, including the head, a piece of white quartz, half white quartz in granite, I believe. Okay, so, and that research took place somewhere over here, this far High Point in Fairfield County here. It's in the Green Mountain area there, very mountainous region where I do my research. Okay, so we probably won't get through all of Connecticut, but doesn't matter. We'll finish it on the next one and go to the next state, which will probably be New York. So, Hartford County, giant skeleton, 1901. And again, some of these things are just mentions in histories. There's no details at all in some of these things. Some of them have fantastic details, which I'm just fascinated by. Hartford, Connecticut joint skeleton. The skeleton joint farmer uncovers relics of Old City, which is very interesting to me. Why would he say that? Numerous relics of a destroyed Indian village have been found on the farm of Jonathan A. Gray near Shidler, this county. An entire skeleton of an Indian giant has been dug up, together with many other bones, curious copper and stone implements, and crude ornaments. The thigh bone of the giant skeleton is twice as large as that of an ordinary man. The relics were found in a gravel pit at a depth of 20 feet. People in large numbers are to the scene of the discovery. Farmer Gray believes that a vast treasure of gold will be found, and he's guarding his property. Okay, so this is from the New Sentinel, 1902, January 34, Fort Wayne, Indiana, okay, reported about this area in Hartford, Connecticut, okay. That's where you'll find repeat articles in this website just to corroborate the story went elsewhere. It went to other publications throughout the states, okay. So very interesting that some of these copper, artifacts were found with it, and just interesting accounting there. Sorry about that, guys. So Hartford County, extraordinary size, 1865. Okay, so here's just a mere mention of one in the history. Connecticut Historical Collections, Volume 22, December 16th, 1865. Hartford, Connecticut. So, an Indian skeleton of extraordinary size was found making an excavation in Hartford on Tuesday. So, maybe this corroboration of the other article there, just to mention in the Connecticut Historical Collections. Skeleton over 7 feet. Hartford. Maybe it's corroborating this one. Okay, the skeleton of an Indian who, when was alive, was apparently over 7 feet tall, has been dug up in Hartford. An earthen jug, some wampum, and glass beads were found with the bones. Okay, so it's very interesting, this earthen jug that seems to be common with some of these large skeletal remains were found elsewhere in the United States among the mounds. Okay, with these odd clay jugs, and doesn't say what this is taken from, does it? But it's interesting, these jugs that they find with these things has something to do with the ceremonial aspects, spiritual aspects of the burials, but common to evidently with these burials here. And I reported that in other videos about these large skeletal remains. Hartford County, giant proportions. Just a slow website, guys. Very slow. Sorry about that. Okay, Hartford County, giant proportions. Evidences of a prehistoric race have been discovered by Hugh Yates, a prosperous landowner of this county, on his farm a few miles west of here. While excavating beneath a high cliff on his place, Mr. Yates came upon an immense grave containing a human skeleton. The frame was of giant proportions. His curiosity aroused. Mr. Yates called in some neighbors, and armed with picks, they burrowed their way into the side of the cliff and found an ancient sepulchre crowded with human skeletons, some of them larger than the first found. One of the frames measured 12 feet. That's awfully big. Along with the skeletons were found curiously wrought jewels and strange ornaments, while cooking vessels and strange instruments of queer design were unearthed in great profusion. The diggers are still at work and expected to make even more important finds. How curious this find is here, and all the different things. And a 12-foot skeleton they found, and it's absolutely immense. twice the size of a 6-foot man. Hartford, Connecticut Herald, November 9th, 1911. This was a sepulcher which was crowded with human skeletons, okay, 1911, so this is long after the Cardiff giant, okay, nobody's going to make these mistakes twice and be ridiculed at this time, so you're finding of these absolutely gigantic people there and crowded with skeletons. What happened to it? What happened to the artifacts? Wrought jewels? I wonder what they're talking about. An 8-foot Fairfield County. This one is, Fairfield. I was far north in Fairfield County, so. And again, I think a lot of these dolmen that you see, whatever they are, standing stones, perch stones, dolmen, were built by a race of people. Okay, these are glacial erratics that they say, which are, standing on, pointed other stones. Yes, they were all contests of strength, and not all the split stones were naturally split stones. Some of the split stones, especially the smaller ones, were contests of strength. They split the stones themselves. Okay, that's what my research shows, okay? A petrified giant. Workmen engaged in digging and excavation under the Trumbull Church unearthed yesterday a petrified giant 8 feet in height and built in proportion. Local experts, you see that, built in proportion, larger in size. Local experts say the mummy must be 150 years old. It was found in a bed of quicksand 20 feet beneath the surface. The body is in a good state of preservation and appears to be that of an Indian. Okay, so who knows what happened to this thing, and if it's a mummified and not petrified like stone, or they say it's petrified, and then they say it's mummified, then they say it's in a good state of preservation. Okay, so I would imagine this is 1897, long after the Cardiff giant hoax. And, they're not going to make that mistake twice. So we're talking about a mummy here. It probably actually still had flesh on it because it's in quicksand, or bed of quicksand, okay, and preserved by, salts, possibly. Okay, this is the Beaver Herald, September 23rd. Another mention in Beaver Herald, Newton Daily Republican, Newton, Kansas, September 20th, 1897. So, 1897. Okay, Bridgeport, Connecticut. Great strength and huge teeth, which I find fascinating. They mention these huge teeth in there. What do they mean by huge teeth? And, the frame suggested great strength. So, the phenotype. Bridgeport, Connecticut. Relation huge teeth. Skeletons of Stone Age men are dug up in Connecticut. Prehistoric inhabitants of Nutmeg State were flatheads of great strength and huge teeth. Bridgeport, Connecticut, August 19th. 2 complete skeletons believed to have belonged to the inhabitants of the earth in the Stone Age, okay, this guy is saying Stone Age, are said to have been unearthed by a band of archaeologists headed by Professor Warren King Moorhead near the Housatonic River at Laurel Beach. Okay, so this may be down south there. I was way up at, some other part of the Housatonic nearby, about 10 miles from me, in this incredible Disneyland of Aboriginal stonework there in upstate Connecticut. Okay, so this is a professor of archaeology. The professor and his assistants have been digging in this section for some time and claimed discovery of a number of indications that the section was once inhabited by a forgotten race. Both skeletons appear to be well preserved. The bones are rough.